Hey everyone, I'm Harish Mukami, the founder and CEO of Gibson AI, where we're revolutionizing backend engineering, delivering AI-driven production-ready code in minutes. You are tuned into Edge of AI, where we help you navigate the backend of AI landscape so you can maximize your minutes. Keep listening so you don't miss a bite.
Hello, AI podcast passengers. Jump on in. Here's what's to come on today's journey. Find out how we progress towards a world of maximizing human creativity, the game changing ways Gibson AI is rapidly accelerating back-end software development and data modeling from days to minutes. And finally, why he believes taking a trip to the beach is fantastic, but even better would be being a whale. All this and more, take your seat.
Welcome aboard the Edge of AI podcast. Snap into your safety belt and prepare to explore the depths of the rapidly expanding AI universe. Each episode is a dispatch featuring hyper-relevant reports from the pilots, pioneers, and passengers aboard the AI rocket ship. We explore the latest use cases and developments in AI, hear from experts building tech, and learn how this disruptive force is transforming industries and society.
Welcome aboard. I'm Ron Levy, your captain for today's voyage. Just like most of you, I've embraced the spirit of exploration throughout my life, from starting my own business before graduating high school to traversing the world's most challenging terrains. I've always sought out new frontiers. I built one of the largest award-winning custom home companies in Los Angeles area. And most recently, I've navigated complex regulations while founding and leading a public company that is dedicated to applying technology and training. Buckle up and get ready. Let's tackle uncharted territories in AI. And we're going to use curiosity as our guiding star. Today's episode features Harish Mukami. He's founder and CEO of Gibson AI, a cutting-edge platform revolutionizing back-end engineering with AI-driven production-ready code in minutes. Harish, based in New York, brings extensive experience from leadership roles at LeafLink, Apple, and Microsoft, and is a Columbia Business School alum. At Gibson AI, he's transforming how software developers build, deploy, and manage high-quality back-end systems, both quickly and efficiently, drastically reducing costs at the same time and maintaining the top-tier standards. So, Harish, welcome to the Edge of AI.
Ron, thanks for having me.
I'm looking forward to this. So we're pretty excited to dive into Gibson AI as they're shaking up the AI software scene, which someone had to do it. Might as well be you. Tell us about the moment you were all in on focusing your attention on the AI industry.
Yeah. This was, I would say, late last year. I was working with a customer to build an internal company knowledge base. So essentially, a knowledge base where their employees can go ask questions, do research, potentially if they want to, say, order a laptop for work or get some sort of things delivered to their home from a company sanction, especially around like what do you call it, return to work type of policies. So one of these customers, they were looking to build some sort of a knowledge base. I remember during my time at Microsoft that something like this took months. This was, I would say, early 2010s. I worked with this customer. I was able to put this together in a couple of weeks. On the other end, this saved hours of time spent by users to hunt for information that was buried within internal docs or communication tools. So while I've been using GPT 3.5 when it came out and GPT-4 for a good period of time, specifically from like a personal and consumer based lens, this was truly an all-in moment for me from an enterprise standpoint. So that's when I decided like I'm gonna go solve problems for the enterprises and software development, coding, something that I've been passionate about for almost like 20 plus years. It seemed like a great place to start.
But you recently posted the real challenge lies in creating precise code that accurately translates human ideas into programming language, allowing humans to handle the creative thinking. It's the fun part. Let's let AI take care of the repetitive, labor intensive coding tasks. And that's unquote. So how exactly do we maximize human creativity, and what does the world look like when we get down this road?
Yeah, this goes to the core of what Gibson AI is and how we're approaching this problem space. So if you think about um, overall like large language models and then AI coding space, your inputs are non-deterministic. So you, as a consumer, as an enterprise user or a developer, is asking in a plain English natural language, which is fairly non-deterministic. And then outputs are also non-deterministic. So as a virtue of being a language model, which is very subjective, it's trained on a lot of data. So the outputs can be unpredictable, it hallucinates a lot, it may not necessarily be relevant to you in many cases. A lot of the core use cases from a consumer standpoint, like from a learning standpoint, educational, kicking off a new project, that all is great, but the challenge is it delivering precise code? And how does precise code look like? There's a lot of grunt work in coding. So most of the software we write is a pattern that we have seen before. Also, there's also an incentive for developers to write according to a specific pattern for plenty of reasons. So maintainability, ensuring that the code quality, and people are following good patterns. So since building software so far has been very label intensive, I feel like as a developer, we spend maybe 20% of the time thinking and 80% of the time writing, documenting, deploying, following the process, fixing why things are broken, and integrating with your tools. So most of the software, that's why we build today, are fairly incremental. So one release to next release, maybe 10% better, one company to next company, maybe 10% better. So freeing up that time, like the 80% of the time that we use, that we actually spend on grunt work, will help us to think about problems more deeply and truly make the experience 10 times better for both from a consumer, whether it is consumers or enterprise users, versus actually this incremental improvement. So this is the core hypothesis of Gibson. We want to tackle the grunt work that software developers do, and we want to do it precisely. So every time Gibson runs, it delivers production-ready code. And the reality is also, I don't think we can rely on AI to do the creative thinking aspect of the, I would say, development work today, frankly, because the state-of-the-art models are not there yet.
But it sounds like what you're describing is the goal that a layman doesn't need to hire a coder at all. They ultimately just use Gibson, and they're able to language what they want, and your product will then do all the coding in the background. Is that accurate?
I hope we can get there at some point, but I don't think we're there yet. Gibson is still targeted towards developers. So our value proposition to developers is let us handle 70 to 80% of the code writing for you, and we'll do it precisely every single time.
Got it. Because the developer, as a developer, will be able to review, judge, quality control what's going on. So we're not expecting perfection from Gibson AI, but we are expecting to take that 80% part and drop it significantly downward. That's kind of it.
Yeah. I think the perfection part that you're talking about is where the state of the art is, right? So the best way to think about it is, say, let's say you as a developer need to write 10,000 lines of code. So nobody thinks of it that way, but I want to put it in the perspective of like the amount of work that needs to be done and what Gibson can do versus what a lot of companies are handling it. So if there are 10,000 lines of code that you as a developer have to write to solve a specific problem or meet a requirement, Gibson can write 8,000 lines of code to perfection. So we can do that perfectly. So every time you ask Gibson to write code, it will write code bug-free, production-ready. It compiles. You can deploy it, ship it straight to production. We also comment it. We also write documentation. So that's where our value proposition comes from. Today, a lot of the companies out there and the coding companies, they do write all the 10,000 lines of code, but the precision varies, right? So we have the state-of-the-art models doing on a sweep bench 5%, 6% completion of tasks. So there are agentic workflows that are pushing into teens. What we're saying is we're going to do 80% of the work that you need to do 100% of the time accurately, precisely.
It's incredibly powerful. I mean, you could look at downtime, whether you throw into that, prior to launch, or even upgrades and things you're doing along the way. I mean, you're going to substantially reduce all of that, correct?
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. I think you hit on a very, very important piece here. So it's not just the code writing piece, it's the long-term maintenance. So no one wants to write code and then be done with it, right? So if you want to build a sustainable business, you want the business to run and serve your customers 2, 5, 10, 15 years. So the code base is going to stay the same. You need an army of engineers to maintain it. Gibson can maintain it for you.
Yeah. It really is a game changer, and it's a great example of what AI is providing. Is it a massive LLM content? I mean, do you have to create this massive bank of data? It sounds like it's just a really huge undertaking that has machine learning involved, right? It learns itself as it goes. Is that accurate?
Yeah, we thankfully didn't have to train LLMs. Maybe we will in the future date, depending on how we go. At least in the beginning, it's still early days. One key thing to say is we're LLM agnostic. Today we use some of the closed source models. In the future, we can definitely use open source models. But the key piece, and I started with this, right? So LLM, non-deterministic inputs, non-deterministic outputs. With Gibson, you still have non-deterministic inputs, but deterministic outputs. The reason why we're able to do that is because we use LLM as a backend micro decisioning engine versus code writing. So we don't just pass through the query that user asks to an LLM and then, hey, LLM, give me this response, and I'm going to clean it up and put it in front of the user. We don't do that. If we were to do that, then it becomes truly the onus, and we're heavily dependent on the specific LLM and how it codes, and it becomes very unpredictable. So that's not to say we don't leverage LLMs, we do, but it's much more intentional, much more in terms of micro decisioning. Code writing piece is done by Gibson.
Yeah. What is the status of Gibson now? In other words, how far along are you on this project? Do you have beta users? Where are you at in that progression?
Yeah, I can talk to you about our journey. So we launched this company in February. We raised our seed round
February
in
of this
May.
year? Of this year?
Yeah, yeah,
Oh, you're brand
yeah,
new. Keep going.
yeah, yeah. We're still pretty early. So raised our seed round earlier. Raised our seed round in May. We launched our beta program sometime around April. We've had beta customers, about 16 beta customers, about 50 users. And then we are ready to actually do our GA anytime now. So we're code complete on the GA piece, GA general availability, that we can go reach out to more folks and onboard more folks. Today, anybody can go to www.gibsonai.com and sign up and start using it right away.
That's an amazing trajectory. I mean, the speed in which you're moving forward. So that means we got some real world examples. Give us an idea of a project or the type of projects that have actually come on board and started using your software.
Yeah, absolutely. We've had customers, a lot of customers launching brand new products. So let's talk about that use case. You know about Struct Studio. That's where we got spun out of. Struct Studio has built out 3 concepts very quickly and launched them. It typically would have taken them about 3 months to launch each of those. They were able to launch those under.
Let me complete a circle for anybody that may not have. We actually did interview Andrew from Struck, but for anybody that hasn't seen that particular podcast, Struck is pretty innovative in the way they operate. Maybe just give a sentence or two on that, so it creates a bit of foundation for what you're saying.
Yeah, absolutely. Struct Studio is a venture studio. They tend to do 1 or 2 concepts a year. So they incubate and they launch a concept from the studio. One of the concepts that is out there in the world is Paw Care, which is a pet care marketplace. They launch that, and then eventually the studio companies get spun out and they raise VC funding, and then hopefully they become sustainable businesses outside of the studio.
Which is fantastic. So through them, there's some Gibson going on. So go ahead now. Sorry.
Yeah. Through them, they launched the Gibson was foundational part of three of these concepts. Something that would have taken months was executed in weeks. Gibson in and itself, 80% of Gibson is written by Gibson. So we wrote Gibson and then we bootstrapped and asked Gibson to rewrite itself, and it rewrote 80% of it. So that's another use case. We've got a few customers who are launching new microservices on their existing platforms. So we have a customer in advertising and analytics space. They wanted to launch new products based on their existing platform in order to serve new needs of their customers. Some of these products were tabled for Q4 of this year, Q3 of this year, so a few quarters down the road. They use Gibson to do that in a couple of weeks, so they completely crushed their roadmap. So something that was coming 3 quarters or 2 quarters from where they communicated to customers, they were able to deliver that in 3 weeks. So very early customers, a lot of promising use case usage. We have a few customers who are using Gibson to build integrations. Some of these integrations are built in span of days, something they have been trying to put off for a while because integrations are a different beast. You need expertise to do it. They're kind of peripheral in terms of your roadmap. So they're not core to a product, but they're needed for you to grow. You get customer requests, and typically they're the ones to fall off the roadmap. These customers were able to quickly build, test these integrations in a matter of days.
And does your software then have to learn the existing platform that they're integrating with? Does your system have to go in and data all of that in order to help with the integration, or does it happen outside of it?
Yeah, so short answer is yes. Gibson does need the context of your environment, so it does need to understand your data models, your code base, in order to be able to integrate it pretty well. There are use cases of Gibson where you can build brand new products, but you can point Gibson to your existing data stores, and it can ingest your data model, understand it, and then build it accordingly. A simple example is that if you want to build an integration to an order management system and you have customers and orders within your platform, you can ask Gibson to you can provide Gibson the context of your customers, your orders, and you can tell Gibson like, hey, Gibson, go make this entities integratable. The first step is that you open up your entities, your customer entity, your order entity to the outside world. The best way to do that would be to expose them as REST APIs along with all the security controls in place. And then now that you have the API available, Gibson also writes documentation automatically. So you get your open API specs, how to integrate with your platform. And now the second step is if you're integrating with, say, QuickBooks, you're pushing these customers and orders into QuickBooks, you can ask a Gibson AI agent to now that I have built the API, now say integrate our API with QuickBooks API, and then this is how these are all the fields that I want you to send, and it can build that for you quickly.
So I'm going to non-techie that a little bit for a lot of our listeners, because what you just said is super powerful and it's really, really big. But it's one thing to build brand new projects, which is amazing, but being able to integrate into other existing softwares or platforms, or even improve your existing product, right? That's another world. And what you just described is the answer to be able to do all that. And I think it's really big, really big. So anybody that's operated a true business online, whether it was an online business or just operating online, and you could be using Shopify, you could be using QuickBooks, you mentioned, and all of these things, to be able to integrate them together and have it kind of seamless, it's super powerful. And people spend a lot of time and a lot of money in an attempt to achieve that or close that gap. And being able to do it with AI, which Gibson is now doing, you just can't understate it. I mean, you don't want to understate it. It's really, really a big deal. And did I miss anything? Sort of talking from a layman, take your techie hat off now, but in just the functional thing. So if we have some business owners now wondering, how do they actually implement it or use it, and what will it achieve for them, without going techie on us. Can you hit that a little bit?
Yeah. Do you mean how do they use Gibson to solve their specific use cases?
Yeah, make up a company or a use case and an integration they may want to do. Hopefully one that Gibson's already dealt with, and talk about the difference it made now. Quick, you did hit that just now, but it was a little tech oriented. So I just want to go on a
Yeah,
limb.
yeah, absolutely. So from a functionality perspective, right? So if you think about software, it's frankly a more fundamental definition of a lot of the things we do is we are representing your physical world in a digital space. If you're an e-commerce company or if you're a distribution company, one of the key important tasks that you have is, hey, I want to get my orders from customers and then I want to fulfill them. I want to infuse that with information that I already have to make decisioning around inventory. And then I want to send that real-time status updates back to our customer so that they know exactly when their order is fulfilled, when their order is accepted, when their order is paid, when their order is shipped, and then how much they're due, and then how to pay all of that. So this typically forms your like a core fundamental task that you need to do, say from an e-commerce, whether it is wholesale business or online business standpoint. A lot of the work that you want to do here is, as of today, in many cases, is bespoke, right? So you have your ordering system on the web, you have internal ERP systems that actually manage your inventory, and then you have communication systems with your customers that are outside of it. So if you are operating in this framework where you want to automate a lot of these processes and you want to ensure that your customers derive the best experience possible, you need to tie all of these together, and you can leverage Gibson to do that. So some of the critical tasks that Gibson can do is if there are any sort of entities that are not represented in a system, you can quickly ask Gibson to do that, and it can actually build out your database for you, where you can store and record all your information. That's number one. Number two is you can have this run at scale. So Gibson takes your entities and it can easily make it as a part of services. So like an order service, like a customer service, like an invoicing service. So it can quickly make that happen. It's really hard to build this microservices, especially at scale. So Gibson can do that very quickly, and in fact, in a matter of like seconds for that matter. All this takes a lot of time, and let us talk a lot of time to hone. Gibson truly accelerates that.
Which would include projections, I assume, too, right? You do things with spreadsheets out of whether it's Excel or another program, but where you can take this information and the spreadsheets would adjust themselves in regard to projections forward looking.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's a big undertaking you've done, and you talked about REST, so RESTful API deployment. Is there anything more you want to say about that? Because that's, or even define it a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely. I think there are multiple pieces to it. One is REST API. That's the protocol that a lot of the APIs use today in terms of communicating between various different systems. That's the communication protocol, and then that's where you can hit third-party systems and then get the information you need. So if you are in the business of exposing and making it easier, especially in the enterprise context, for developers to build into it so that they can offer end-to-end seamless experiences, it's very important that you have a way to do that. REST is one of the way to do that. The second piece is you want to make sure that these products and APIs that you built, you can deploy and scale them in the infrastructure of your choice, whether it is AWS or Azure or GCP. And there's also a third piece of it, which is they need to be able to run independently. There are plenty of concepts out there. Containers is one of the concepts. So Gibson also containerizes your application. So if you think about all the way from designing your data model, thinking about how to represent your objects in a database, Gibson can do that for you. And then Gibson can expose these objects, whether internally within your systems or to external world via REST APIs. And Gibson can build those infrastructure components for you to ship this into your infrastructure of your choice and via Docker containers. So we write all of this, and the second piece that I'm hitting is more of an infrastructure component that Gibson does, which again goes back to the grunt work that developers have to do, and Gibson handles that for developers.
So, so at the core, you're data modeling, the core of backend development, and you're almost setting new standards, I would think, and redefining what's possible when it comes to development times and costs. Is that an overstatement?
Uh, no, I think you're very accurate. And one of the things we always talk about, whether it is me or CTO or folks on our team, um, data models are foundations of your software. Right? So if you get the data models right, that's most of the work that you have to do. If you get the data models wrong, and as you scale, once you start having customers, it's hard to change your foundational data models because it presents a lot of risks. You have customers actually using your product, so it becomes challenging. So what typically, as companies scale, starting from 0 to 1, and then they start having customers as you scale, um, this racks up as a tech debt. So I just do today. Take orders and then I don't do payments. Now in the future, I want to do payments. Now as we continue to go along, I want to start shipping products to customers. So your scope of the problems that you're trying to solve is expanding, and your data models need to be adaptable and change according to your customer needs. It's a hard job, and you typically try not to do it as you go forward and start scaling up. And then what you do is you build a lot of application logic, business logic, tons of lines of code to mask the fact that your data model doesn't necessarily scale along with what you want to do. Gibson actually attacks the problem from a foundational perspective. We get the data models right from day one. It's very easy to create new data models, update them, migrate them using Gibson. So that truly changes the way people think about scale. People think about how they want to address technical debt. Technical debt is the last one that people want to address because it doesn't affect customers right away, but you do rack it up, and then it's costly to maintain. Your software becomes costly to maintain. You run into performance issues, scalability issues. So, absolutely right. I think the net effects of using Gibson are going to cascade in and have multiple benefits down the road.
I think that's why I think you've created a great example for where AI is now, and if you want a glimpse into the future, you're kind of tackling that because this first step is for helping developers. But I think for anybody that's listened to this podcast for the last few seasons, the world of developers is changing, and it's not all bad, by the way. And it's not that they're being put out of business; it's just changing. I think that's what you're describing here a lot. The role of the developer is still in place, and it will be, because even if I could speak into Gibson as a non-coder and tell it what to do, I'm not going to get there like someone that has expertise in coding. I'm just not, right? So it's just really important to kind of point that out. But ultimately, it'll probably get there, right?
Yeah.
Be another role for developers and coders, because it's just a critical art, and it really is important. But the automated deployment process you described, it's very, very significant. And I've done a lot in different businesses that depend on timelines and roadmaps and developers coming through and everything else. And I think this just tightens it up so much that it allows far superior growth, and thereby far superior value than a lot of companies are getting right now. So it's a big thing you took on, and no doubt your experience at Microsoft and your other experiences played a role when you went to lay this out, because you're also moving at an incredible pace. So I want you to talk about that a little bit, but also the name itself, Gibson AI. Gibson is not your name, so I'm very curious where that came from. And then also talk about this incredible trajectory, which is less than a year old, and what we can expect by the end of the year.
Absolutely, yeah. Gibson is. We were brainstorming, and mostly this was Struck Studio folks talking about what to name this company. And there is a 90s movie called Hackers, and Gibson is the name of the supercomputer. So it was it was a play on the characters, and it sounded like something that we want to call our autonomous AI backend engineer Gibson. So you can hopefully we have our customers talking in terms of let's give this task to Gibson and Gibson will do it for you. So this name was this name came up early, like way early in the process. So I would say even we officially incorporated in February, but I think sometime around December, Jan timeframe. And it's stuck, and it's quite simple and easy to pronounce, I guess.
Fantastic. I'm super glad I asked. That's a great background on it. So talk to me about a couple of goals. One is by the end of the year, where do you see yourselves? And if you can even guess or imagine 3 or 5 years out, what does that look like?
Yeah, absolutely. Uh, right now, our focus, we have our GA product out there, and the things that Gibson can do today, it can write 100% production ready data models. It can write your data models like a senior engineer would. It can expose these data models via REST API. Like you talked about, it can do automated deployments. It can write unit tests. It can write your documentation. So a lot of the grunt work, again, that I talked about. We also have a Gibson AI agent that we're going to be releasing pretty soon, which is going to start writing a lot of custom business logic. But the caveat here is that, again, custom business logic is very nebulous. It's non-deterministic. So when I talk about so far around data modeling, deployment, API services, you can literally don't have to even worry about reviewing the code. But when we talk about AI agents, please review the code. That's going to we write 80% of it, then the remainder of the 20%, you can use Gibson AI agent to write it, but then make sure that it is meeting your needs. So that's what what the product is today. As through the rest of the year, our primary goal is to onboard as many customers as possible and make sure that we provide the best product possible for them, so that they are being successful in just crushing their roadmaps, delivering products to customers, and overall realizing the value proposition of delivering production quality code in just a matter of minutes. As we continue to go into look ahead into the next 3 to 5 years, what I want to foresee is most of our customers, I think majority of the customers are using Gibson to write 70 to 80% of the code that they would. We are primarily focused on backend, so we're primarily focused on the backend code. And then Gibson is maintaining that 70 to 80% of the code. So any sort of developers or development work that they're doing is just pushing the envelope for them and then ensuring that they stay ahead of their competitors in terms of delivering the best products out there. So we still think that the developers are still going to be using Gibson, so it's not autonomously going off and writing code and shipping into production, but each developer is going to be able to do 10 times more work with Gibson than without it.
Super fantastic. Well, we're gonna go from all of this AI talk and learning about what you're working on. We're gonna enter the segment that's called AI Wants to Know, and it's gonna be 10 quick questions to you about you. And the idea here is to answer, in not lengthy. You certainly can go off on tangents if you like, but we're gonna get started here, and I want to find out a little more about you. You ready for it?
Let's go.
All right. Well, what's the first thing you ever remember being proud of?
I would say this was back in middle school. I did a perfect score in Math Olympiad, so I was very proud of that.
As you should be, and you ended up utilizing it. What do you need help with that you wish you did not?
I think this is probably more relevant in this post, I guess, LLM world. I do need help with content creation and marketing. That's not something that I have traditionally spent time doing. We could say this is part of that approach. Thank you, Ron, for that. But that's definitely something that I need help with.
All right. And then what do others often look to you for help with?
I would say one of the things that I feel like I'm good at is identifying customer needs, extracting insights from customer conversations and identifying important problems. I'm describing everything that a typical PM would do. So I started out my career as an engineer, moved over to product management. I think that's a core skill that PMs should have, and that's something that I feel like I add a lot of value to from that perspective.
And what do you treasure most about your human abilities?
Optimism. I'm a overall pretty optimistic person, so that's why I take on a lot of challenges. Sometimes they pan out, sometimes they don't. So, but I always feel like we can get things done.
All right. And throughout your whole life, what is the most consistent thing about you?
I feel like I have kept my priorities simple and try to live a fairly simple life. Um, there aren't a lot of things I desire, so my life is pretty boring, to be honest. Like I do outside of I work and I spend time with family, but that's been pretty consistent.
Well, if Gibson AI is any example, it is simple. It's very simple on its goal level. It is not simple to put together and build in all the components, necessary to make that a successful company. So, um, I may argue with you about how simple you made your life, but worthwhile, absolutely. Um, so, throughout your whole life, what has changed the most?
I always kept moving, so um, I have been. I was born in India. I grew up in India, and then I moved 10,000 miles here to the U.S. I would say 20 years ago. And I kept moving. I've moved states, cities. I did not stay at one place for more than 2 years, to be honest with you. So
Wow.
uh, there's always something or the other. So that was a moving was always the constant for me. I've been in this current place for more than 2 years, so maybe I'm breaking the pattern. So hopefully we'll see.
Well, change is a good thing. What do you find strangest about reality?
It's the concept of habit. Um, Everybody goes about their life in a very predictable manner. Um, you think of humans, you think of animals, like most people are fairly predictable. There is like a time that they sleep, time that they wake up and do their chores and go to work and come back. And a lot of people do a lot of similar things. So I almost feel like we're living in a matrix.
So I don't know. It very well could have answered the question about reality when you say living in a matrix. So I'll let others be the judge of that. That feeling that we've all had of feeling really alive. It's just a rush of energy and it comes upon us. When most recently do you remember getting that feeling?
I think it was either last weekend or weekend before when I went to the beach. I think going to the beach truly, it's something about the water, the sand, the sun that just makes you feel alive. Fortunate to live nearby where there are plenty of beaches on the Jersey Shore um, or the Long Island, but yeah,
I,
that was the last time.
that's a lot of Mother Nature right there, and I'm with you completely. Whether it's your first time to the beach or your thousandth time, it's equally as special. Yeah, for sure. What is your most unique trait?
I don't know if it's unique across people. I'm sure there are plenty of people who can do that, but I can come up with a lot of ideas. Um, Many. I sit alone for an hour. I can come up with plenty of ideas. I see opportunities everywhere. Well, execution is a different thing, but my mind is always racing.
And if you were not human, what would you be?
Uh, a whale. Uh, I'm fascinated by ocean and how vast it is and how unexplored it is. I know there is a concept of space and planets and other things, but ocean is right next to us, so it's it's vastly unexplored, and I feel like a whale has the opportunity to go everywhere and explore that. So I would love to be a whale.
Wow. Great answer. So we're going to go into it's three parts to this, but let me explain them to you, but then we'll break it down to one or the other. One is AI leaders and influences that have been influential on you. I want to talk about those a little bit. The other is resources. So things you subscribe to, places you go to learn about AI, past, present, or future, actually. And then the third will be any tips, anything, we've certainly covered Gibson, but anything beyond that, any AI you're using that you might recommend to our listeners to go check out should fit them. So with that, let's start with the AI leaders and influences. Can you name some of the sort of leaders that help you notice the AI world and expand on it?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I have been pretty active on, I would say, X since last year. And I've been following a bunch of pioneers, obviously. I follow a lot of things, and your OpenAI, Anthropic, Google do in this field, and um, a lot of leaders in those companies. One of the things that's been very interesting to me, and which I seem to be agreeing as I'm more deeper into AI, is Meta's chief AI scientist Jan LeCun. So I think he has been, they've done two things. One is open source their model, which is very, very helpful in terms of truly advancing this ecosystem. And obviously, Meta has been a pioneer. And since he's the chief AI scientist of Meta, I think he's somebody who has been driving this movement. The second is a lot of the, I would say, marketing-ish takes on the web that you see, like this is taking over the job, everybody will be jobless in 3 years, there is an AGI around the corner. I think he's someone who started saying that, like, hey, hold on, like, we're not there yet. I think there is definitely a lot of benefits to AI, specifically on the generative space, but human capabilities are not to be replaced anytime soon. And some of the things that he has been saying since last year, and now a lot of people are realizing, LLMs are awesome. They're great in a lot of use cases, but they're in no way, shape, or form eliminating an entire industry overnight. So it's been 2 years since GPT 3.5 was released, and I think we're seeing benefits, but the world has still stayed the same. So I think he was one of the folks who said, and there was a pretty significant reasoning too behind that. So there's compute, there's data, there's algorithms. All of them are in a way restrained. And if there's any advances and breakthroughs there, then we could potentially see acceleration to a point where a lot of the things that a lot of, I would say, are hype people are going to be realized. But I think maybe he was the first one to like maybe push the brakes, and I feel like his takes have come in.
Can you try and spell his name for us if you know?
Yeah, Jan, Yann LeCun, LeCun. I think that's what his. Let me.
That's all
see
good.
if
He
I
could
got
be
it.
findable from that. I just want to break it down a little so our
Yeah.
listeners could chase it down from there. But sounds like a really great sort of resource to go to. So how about just resources itself now? So a handful of your favorite resources in AI.
Yeah, I would say again, I there are a lot of um, folks on X. I don't want to keep plugging X because I'm fairly new to it, and I mute a lot of the content except for AI content, so you can truly go into the rabbit hole. So I want to be careful. But a lot of the folks who are doing some great work on AI, they are posting about it on X. I know LinkedIn is also another resource where you can go take a look. Another resource I would say is if you're truly like not just want to hear about what everybody else is saying, but you want to learn from foundations, first principles, uh, read the original Transformers paper, which was published back in 2017. That's going to talk to you about what LLMs are about and how did they come about in terms of uh, what was the foundation behind the GPT 3.5 and then the rest of the LLMs. Another thing that I would recommend folks to do is to go to YouTube, listen to podcasts, um, and learn as much as you can. There are various different viewpoints, so it can give you a good amount of information. And it's a passive listening activity, so you can definitely learn there. Um, there's also some courses on Coursera that you want to go, depending on what you are interested in. If you actually want to build AI ML systems, there are deep learning courses in Coursera by Andrew NG. That's OG course for anyone trying to get into AI. But there are a lot of application courses too. Like now they do a lot of tie-ups with startups who are actually building agents. Those are all very helpful. And it doesn't necessarily have to be in a business context, to be honest with you, Ron, like even your day-to-day life, right? So there are things that you want to manage. You want to get hold of your calendar. You want to be better at your job. You want to be better at managing your time. Like AI is going to give you a step function change to make that happen.
And some of the courses you mentioned at Coursera, they can find some courses there to start that journey and get. Yeah, it's sometimes that first step is what's difficult, but once you get there and you learn of other resources, it's that beautiful rabbit hole that enhances your life just through the process itself. So kind of really like that. And any cool ways you're using AI that our listeners could also take advantage of?
Yeah, absolutely. I don't want to plug Gibson here, but honestly, I've been using Gibson from a personal standpoint to build tools for myself. So um, I know we're already using Gibson to write code, but obviously, as an engineer, as a product manager, I see usage around leveraging my own product to build software that helps me, whether it is both doing my job better or from a personal standpoint. Obviously, there's a lot of chat GPT. Uh, Definitely don't be shy about going in to chat GPT and asking questions. But it's the next step of questions. That's where you're going to get into a point where you're going to get a much more tailored responses to you if you're going to ask a very specific question. So um, the key to all of this is spending more time and then sticking to it and being consistent.
As is the key to most things in life. Really, really well put. So if people want to track you, find out what you're up to, hear your comments and stuff. Maybe you can give us one or two of your favorite places to post. I'm guessing X is coming on here, but what just give people some direction to follow you.
Yeah, absolutely. The best way is on LinkedIn. You can look me up, Harish Mukami, Harish. Last name is Mukhami. On X, my Twitter handle is Harish Muk. Follow me on X, please, and follow me on LinkedIn. And I'm starting to post. I remember I told you content creation is something that I need help with. I am trying to overcome that challenge as well. So I'm posting. I think I'm going to get better at that.
I am sure you are. Harish, thank you so much. I've really enjoyed the conversation.
Likewise, Ron, and thank you for the opportunity to speak to you today.
Well, it's time for another safe landing here at the outer edges of the AI universe for today. This is your captain, Ron, and on behalf of our guest and the entire crew, I'd like to thank you for choosing to voyage with us today. We wish you a safe and enjoyable continuation of your journey. When you come back aboard, make sure you bring a friend. The Starship is always ready for more adventurers. If you're listening, go to Spotify or iTunes right now, rate us and say something awesome. Or if you're watching this on YouTube, join over 135,000 other Edge of followers by hitting the subscribe button and passing this episode on to a friend or two. You can also now catch us on Myco.io, and that's M as in Mary, MYCO.io, where you can watch and earn for your time and attention. Don't forget to visit edgeofai.xyz, where you can learn more about participating and subscribe to the Outer Edge newsletter for the latest Edge of company news, events, and show drops. In addition, connect with us on all the major social platforms by searching for Edge of _AI. Join the exciting conversations that are happening online. And before we sign off, mark your calendars for our next voyage, where we'll be continuing to unravel AI's mysteries and advancements. And until then, bye bye.
The views and opinions expressed on Edge of AI reflect solely those views and opinions of the show hosts and its guests. Please make sure to do your own research. While we make every effort to ensure that the information about AI technology is accurate and up to date, we cannot guarantee its accuracy, completeness, or timeliness. We make no representations or warranties of any kind with respect to the information, products, or services discussed. Please be aware AI may occasionally generate incorrect or misleading information and produce offensive or biased content. Under no circumstances shall we be liable for any loss or damage, including, without limitation, indirect or consequential loss or damage, or any loss or damage arising from loss of data or profits arising out of or in connection with the use of technology discussed on our podcast. Additionally, our show is not financial advice. You understand that you are using any and all information available on or through this podcast at your own risk. Whenever making financial decisions, we recommend doing your own research and talking to your accountant for financial advice. Lastly, time to time, we may feature sponsored content on the show for which we receive value, and we may share links for which we receive a commission if you make a purchase through one of these links. Refer to our website, edgeofai.xyz, for our full disclaimer, terms and conditions, privacy policy, and copyright notice.